Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome back to another episode. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about how I ended up out here in Mexico. Some of you guys might already know that I have other YouTube channels, and on my other YouTube channel, Jose Unleashed, well, I talked about this several months ago. On that channel, I like to talk to you guys about, my stories, my past life, all kinds of current events, all kinds of stuff on that channel. Again, if you guys want to check it out, I'll provide the links down in the bottom so you guys can go on ahead and check it out when you're done here. But anyways, in today's show, I'm just going to re-upload a episode that I did a few months ago where I basically recounted, okay, the whole story as to how I left Miami and I ended up in Seattle, traveled the country, and eventually ended up out here in Mexico. Again, I have moved out here, to Mexico as of right now over 7.5 years ago. Kind of crazy how time flies. But anywho's, without further ado, let's not waste any more time. I got a long story, and you know how I like to make long stories short, and they end up being long story longer. But anyways, without further ado, let's get to the show. Hope you guys enjoy today's live stream.
If you have the superior
All right, guys. All right. Hope you guys are ready to rock and roll. Have a fun show today, as
Right,
usual.
right, but I mean, we can all look Bitcoin sort of.
All right. Let's get into the show, guys. I know that's what you guys want to. You guys want to hear me? You want to see me? You got Gizmo out here. We got Lambo off screen. I didn't get time to set him up today in his wheelchair. He's out there, busy mowing the lawn. We got, a lot of green grass that's been growing because of all the rains lately. So we got him out there chopping up the grass, working for his rent. So anyway, shout out to everyone out there. Welcome back to another live stream. Welcome back to another show. And today's show, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going into details as to how I ended up out here in Mexico. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because for a lot of you guys, some of you guys know the story, some of you guys don't know the story, but we're going to get into it in today's video. So, hope you guys are ready to have some fun and talk about, how I ended up out here in Mexico. So usually on this channel, what I like to do is that I like to just go into story time, or I like to talk about current events, or funny things that are happening in the world, or whatever it is. Some of you guys might be new here, maybe never been to this channel before or seen me here before, but that's what I like to do on this channel. We like to just wing it. Some days are more serious than others, and in today's episode, of today's video, we're going to be talking about, well, how I ended up out here in Mexico. Some of you guys know part of the story. Some of you guys know the full story. Some of you guys, don't know anything about the story as to how I ended up here. So we're just going to get into it and talk about it, because I know for a lot of you guys, it's it's very important to know how I ended up out here. So might as well talk about it. And so, like, usually on my other channel, on just talking about living in Mexico, well, you guys hear me talk about one version, meaning I talk mostly about how much I love it out here in Mexico, how I just came out here on a whim, and how things kind of worked out. But you guys don't know like the full story. Some of you guys do know the full story. Again, if you follow, my channel, on this channel, I like to, go into more detail. All right, one second here. I like to go into more details. And I've explained to you guys, some of you guys know a little bit more about my story. All right, one second. Let me bring it up here real quick here. So again, some of you guys that know my channel, this channel here in particular, you guys already know. Like I said, I do story time. I only do live streams on this channel for now. I know I've been wanting to upload videos, but it's just, man, so much to do here. So much, it's a little difficult sometimes with a one-man show. But again, some of you guys know part of the story. Again, how I got arrested in Texas, which prompted, that was really the catalyst, for me to come out here. But again, I've told you guys how I lived in Seattle before. When my weight loss situation, when I used to drive for Uber, how I quit cigarettes. My life as a chef, because that was my my actual career choice. Once I left high school, that's the route I took. I went down that route. And so again, if you guys want to piece it all together, you guys want even more details, I suggest you guys check out the rest of my channel, where I just go into more detail, and I tell you guys my stories, and I tell you guys how basically I kind of almost ended up here, but you guys don't know the full story as to how I really, really ended up here. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. For those of you guys that are here joining me and interested in the story, that in case you guys don't know the story yet. Um, but back when I first moved to Mexico, before I moved to Mexico, my channel, my original channel, might as well show you the original channel. All right, so you guys can see the channel. This is my original channel, but I've been on YouTube. Here, you guys can see right here, oldest videos. I've been on YouTube 9 years. In October, it's going to be 10 years. So in a few months, basically 10 years on YouTube. Kind of crazy, right? How time flies when you're having fun out there. Um, but yeah, I've been on YouTube for a long time, talking about all kinds of things, and a lot of people just always wonder, how did I end up out here? What exactly was it that caused me, to leave the USA to come out here? And so again, right from the beginning, the original reason I came out here, was because again, I of my situation in Texas. All right, so but yeah, so how did I end up here? Okay, so let's just get right into it. So look, the reality was is like I lived in I'm originally from Miami. I was born and raised out there, and around my early 30s. So it was in 2013. So 2013, I would have been 32 years old, I think, 33 years old. I left Miami. All right, and when I left Miami, I went to Seattle. Again, you guys can check out, my videos here. We're going from, those are oldest videos. So there you go. The time I lived in Seattle. So you guys can check that out. And even check out some stories as to when I lived in Miami. Again, when I worked at the strip club, the reason I became a chef. What else? When I worked at the zoo. Yeah, that's right. I was imprisoned in the zoo as an animal. Anywho's, but as I was saying, I moved to Seattle and I lived in Seattle for a while. I made money in Seattle. I was able to do really good. But I was in the business consulting industry. I was somewhat, within on the periphery of the cannabis industry because it was just became it had just become legal over there. And I was helping a lot of people with like business stuff and all kinds of things. But eventually, um, as that industry matured up there, basically they basically pushed me out alongside a lot of other people. And so yeah, I had to get out of the industry. You know what I mean? Like I already knew the writing was on the wall, and so for a very long time I was I already knew my days, as a consultant, my days out there in Seattle were going to be numbered. And I always had that in the back of my mind. And so that's why I was like, okay, I picked up the camera, I started doing YouTube, yada, yada, yada. But, anyways, eventually, I left Seattle. I want to say around 27, yeah, either I think late, no, early 2017. I left Seattle, and I was just basically like a nomad. I was just living out of my car. I had money, but I just didn't want to settle down anywhere. I didn't want to start over yet. And so I was like, you know what? Let me see the country. Let me explore the country. So I was, just riding around the country, going from one end to the other. Again, you guys can go deep dive into my Instagram account, go super far back, and you guys can see, I used to take pictures, so, got a picture of me in Colorado, I got a picture of me in middle of Kansas, I'm always all over the place. But again, I was just, checking out the country because I never thought I was gonna. I mean, well, my mind at the time, I was like, man, I don't know how long I'm gonna have this available to me for me to, go on ahead and explore the country. So let me just do it now. I'm young. I got a few bucks in my pocket. I'll figure it out later. What I'm gonna do for money, what I'm gonna do for a job, how am I gonna settle down, whatever. But I was just thinking, all right, let me just explore the country. And so whatever. I was just driving back and forth, blah blah blah. A lot of times. So I was living in Vegas at the time. Again, I go more into detail in on this channel. The time I was living on a boat in the middle of the desert. So I was living out in the Vegas area, and one of those days, I woke up and all right, I'm gonna go visit family up in Miami. So I was just like, all right, road trip, another road trip. So I was driving down there and I drove through an area of Texas that I'd never driven through before, which was North Texas. I wish someone would have warned me to stay away from that area. But anyways, long story short, I got pulled over. I got wrongfully arrested. I literally got arrested for resisting arrest. But anyways, that moment in time when I got arrested and I got thrown in jail, they threw away the key and I was locked up for 3 days. Before I was able to even make a phone call or anything like that. During that time in prison, I was like, oh man, this sucks. But at the same time, I was thinking to myself, well, I guess this is that moment, that catalyst that you were looking for the next, movement in your life, the next chapter of your life. And I didn't know what the next chapter was going to be. I didn't know what anything was going to be. I just knew it wasn't what I was doing. Okay. I knew, when I was in Seattle, I knew that wasn't it. When I was driving around aimlessly as a nomad, that also wasn't it. I mean, I was just trying to figure out what the next move was going to be. And then basically, life hit me in the face. And again, like the old saying goes, the Mike Tyson saying goes, Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. All right. And so, long story short, I didn't have a plan and I got punched in the face. And when I got punched in the face, basically that scenario, that situation in Texas, basically, because of that, I lost everything that I had. Okay, I'm just giving you the layman terms because I go more into detail in my other videos. But anyways, I lost everything I had. And I literally had to start from zero, from nothing. I was at negative, and I had to start from the beginning. And so I had two choices. Okay, what am I going to do? Move to. At that point, I was thinking, all right, I'm going to move to Mexico now, like right now. That I still have a few bucks left in my pocket, and whatever. You know what I mean? I'm just going to get away from all this insanity. So at that point, that's when I decided I was going to move to Mexico, but I didn't because I had friends and family in Miami and in Los Angeles, California, that basically said, "No, Jose, don't leave us, don't leave, stay here. We'll help you. We'll, whatever. We'll figure it out. Don't go to Mexico. That's crazy. How are you? Why are you gonna move out there? You're gonna, they're gonna get killed. You're gonna die. You're not gonna survive. Why are you moving to a third world country? Blah." So basically, they convinced me to not do that. And so again, I had to choose between Miami and LA. And I had already spent the majority of my life in Miami, and I already knew I did not want to go back to Miami. Definitely didn't want to start over again there, because look, just to put it simply, Miami is awesome. It's beautiful. It's great, but it's Florida, man. It's freaking insane out there. But more than anything else, the fact that that never changed. It never has and never will. Not anytime soon. The fact that Florida is one of the least paying states in the country. So meaning, if I go back to Florida, I'm gonna go back to making $10 an hour, $11 an hour, and paying $3,000 for a hole in the wall. And so I was like, all right, maybe that's not the route I'm going to take. Maybe I'll just go back to maybe I'll go to Los Angeles where I had a bunch of friends there. And basically they were willing to help me out because, well, I was helping them out and I was, throwing around my wealth and my good fortunes when I was in Seattle. So I made a lot of friends on the West Coast. And basically when I fell on hard times, well, they were there to lift me up and help me out. So whatever. They convinced me not to go to Mexico and they convinced me to come to Los Angeles. So I said, well, okay, whatever. You know what I mean? I'll go to Los Angeles and that way I can, figure out my legal situation in Texas and at the same time, well, I'll be somewhere where I can make pretty good money in, Los Angeles and I'm with friends and they're more than willing to help me out. Again, they were begging me to come there instead of move to Mexico. So I was like, all right, whatever. I moved to Los Angeles and I was trying to get back on my feet, only to realize that, man, things had changed a lot by the time I was trying to get back into the workforce. Because again, by the time I got to LA, it was late 2017. Yeah, yeah, late 2017. And, the last time that I really, really had a job was like, I don't know, 2012, give or take, 2013. Yeah, because I was working in LA. I'm sorry, I was working in Seattle before I, went into the consulting stuff or whatever. So, anyways, And things have changed a lot. Things have changed dramatically. Meaning, the fact that the pay wasn't as good as it used to be. Everything got even more expensive than what I thought, and it was just like, oh man, this sucks. I was, the only thing I really had to my name at the time was my car, and I was thinking, man, this is terrible. You know what I mean? I'm only gonna be working, 40 plus hours a week, assuming I can get a job that can give me that many hours. I'm gonna be working only to pay my rent and to pay my bills. And I was like, man, this is exactly, the same position I was in when I left Miami. It's not really what I wanted to do. Now, granted, I was in a better position in Los Angeles than I was in Miami, but regardless, it was just something that I just didn't want to get back into. So, I would Uber around. Again, I got the video on the channel. You can check it out later. I was Ubering and just doing side gigs and, doing photography and video and all this other stuff. Again, I was in Hollywood, so it was pretty easy to find work in that sense. But, it was easy to find work. Another thing was, finding work that was going to pay me a nice salary. So, those are two different animals. But regardless, work aplenty. So I was working and trying to dig myself out of the hole. And every time that I was just dealing with the things in Texas, it felt like I was just going deeper down into the hole instead of trying to get myself out of the hole. And eventually, around the mid 2018, because I moved to Mexico in June of 2018. But right before that, the months prior to that, so I guess, March, April, May, give or take, I started getting really harassed, by the people in Texas. Basically, the people in Texas were holding my freedom for ransom, and they were just increasing the amount of money I had to pay them in order to, just go to court and get my freedom, just go through the motions. And so they were basically already telling me, it's like, hey, if you don't pay this insane amount, bop, 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 by this date, then we're going to be sending a bounty hunter after you to come get you and bring you back to Texas and put you in prison over nothing. And I was like, oh no, that's it. And so, at that time I had, made a lot of friends in Los Angeles. I made a really good friend and a criminal attorney. I was actually his driver. Because again, through my Ubering, I was able to find people to to be their personal driver for and things like that. So, anyways, I was this really, really highly decorated attorney in LA. I was his personal driver, and eventually we became really good friends. And I told him about my story, about what was happening to me in Texas, and he basically said, "Oh no, this is not good," and he's the one that basically, I was already telling him, look, I'm thinking about moving to Mexico in order to just get away from all this. I don't know, what do you think? And so my lawyer friend, was basically telling me, look, as Jose, as much as I don't want you to go, as much as I want you to stay here to be my driver, to be my friend, because we're really good friends. He said, listen, man, you know what I mean? Like, if you were my son, I'm advising you right now, you know what I mean? There's this lawyer. Yeah, you go to Mexico. That's the only way you're going to be able to get away from this. Otherwise, it's just going to spiral out of control even worse than what you even think. And, you might as well get out now before you can't get out. And when I heard that from him, that was a real wake up call. I was like, oh, because I was thinking the lawyer was going to tell me what my friends told me, what other people told me, and that he was going to be able to pull some strings and, get it fixed or whatever. And no, no. And I'm going to tell you why, because basically he told me, he goes, look, my son, used to be in a band and he used to do the same thing as you, just travel across the country. And he literally got pulled over in the same spot, in the same area, same exact thing happened to him that happened to you. And and we've been fighting that for almost a decade. All right. And, and he was telling me, he's like, listen, man, I got money, I got the resources, I got everything, and yet, it just, yeah, it took it all out of us. All right, just trying to, was just trying to fight for my son's freedom. And so in your case, Jose, you know what I mean? You obviously don't have the resources, you don't have the money, you don't have anything, you know what I mean? So you're pretty much fucked, you know what I mean? You're screwed, So that's the advice I would be giving you. And so, well, I really didn't have much of a choice. I was already, again, 1 foot out the door. He was telling me this. And then one day, again, this is all happening within the same kind of month area time, I went back to the place that I was living in. So at that time in Los Angeles, I was living in a house, but I was renting a room, okay, with a bunch of other people because that's the only way that I could have afforded rent. I was paying $1,100 in 2018. Okay, I was paying $1,100 for a room smaller than the office I'm in right now. Okay, and so basically, you know what I mean? Like the people that were so there was a couple, you know, that came from Alabama, and they came out to, you know, Los Angeles to try to achieve that Los Angeles Hollywood dream. They failed miserably, and so then they basically told me one day, "Hey, Jose, we're moving back to Alabama, so you and the other roommates, you got to find another place to live." And so they didn't really give us, you know, much time to get out of there. Now the other roommates, you know, they were from Los Angeles, so they were able to, you know, find, you know, a place to go to. You know, one of them went back to live with their parents, whatever. So everybody, you know, was able to figure something out. The people from Alabama, you know, they were on their way to back to Alabama, and I only had 3 weeks, 3 weeks, okay, to find a new place to live. And I was like, oh my God, you know, what am I gonna do? And so yeah, North Texas, Childress, Texas. That's exactly where it was. Yeah, shout out to you. Yeah, again, I go into detail in my video talking about exactly that. Okay, in fact, here, I'll show you real quick so you guys can, in case you want to see it later. But right there, see, getting arrested in Texas for resisting arrest. Yeah, they're right there. Okay, you can see the video there, and when I go into tell that story. But anywho's, so yeah, I was up Shit's Creek. I really didn't have much of a choice. So again, I wasn't like 1,000% poor, and I still didn't want to move to Mexico. So I went on ahead and I was looking for an apartment, you know, in Los Angeles. You know, first of all, like an actual apartment. I was like, all right, let me see. Maybe I can get an apartment myself. Because there, you know, again, I knew friends and you know, they had apartments, they had whatever. So I was like, all right. So I just started doing some investigating. I started going down that route, only to quickly realize that I was not going to be able to get an apartment because not only were they asking for one, you know, month's rent to move in, a month's rent, double deposit, all these other fees, you know, what's it call it? Like I had to fill out what you call a rental fee thing, and what you call it, like a application, you know, so I had to pay for the application to apply to see if I can get, you know, an apartment. And I didn't have money to be applying to all these places, knowing fully well that I was going to get rejected because they were asking for credit score, they were asking for job history, they were asking for bank statements. And I'm like, bro, where the hell am I going to get any of this stuff? You know what I mean? I work for Uber, you know what I mean? I'm self-employed on the other end, you know what I mean? So I can't prove that. My credit score is like negative 355, you know, so I was like, that's not going to work either. So I couldn't find a place. So I gave up on that very quickly. And then I was like, all right, I guess I got to rent another room with other people. So I went on that route and I just started looking for rentals, you know, other rooms, you know, with people. But again, every situation was just from bad to worse, to from worse to worser. And I was like, oh my God. You know what I mean? Like I already thought, you know, I thought I was already in a bad living situation, you know, living in that room with all those people. But then when I was looking into kind of replicating that same situation elsewhere, I was like, oh my God, this is even worse and more expensive. So I was like, oh man. So, anyways, everything was just getting worse. And so I still had in the back of my mind, all right, Mexico, Mexico, or at least leave the country, right? So then I started, you know, researching. Okay. And originally, you know, when I was researching, um, you know, right off the starting the research or whatever, I was thinking, look, you know, I'm leaving the country. I'm going to start over. Might as well make it an adventure. Let's see where we can go. I really wasn't thinking Mexico. I'm not going to lie. I was just thinking leaving the country. So immediately I was thinking Argentina. And I was thinking Spain because those two had pretty, you know, low cost of living. I speak fluent Spanish. So to me, I was looking for a Spanish country. Again, I already knew it was going to be extremely difficult me landing in another country with nothing left to my name. You know, I had 1,500 left to my name after moving to Mexico. But long story short, you know, I knew I wasn't going to have much money, much resources, much anything. And so I was like, okay, right off the bat, I was thinking Spain and Argentina until I realized, oh my God, it's going to be expensive for me to set up shop there, expensive to fly out there, and expensive to just get it, you know, get my feet on the ground. So like, oh man, you know, these things are not going to work as much as I want to go to Argentina or Spain. And so then the next thing I was thinking about is like, all right, me in my crazy mind, I was like, all right, maybe I can try Venezuela because, again, I was running away from Dog the Bounty Hunter, right? I was running away from this bullshit. And so I was thinking to myself, all right, whatever, like let's go balls to the wall. Let's go to Venezuela. Again, I speak Spanish. My background, both of my parents are Cuban. So to me, Cuba, Venezuela, they have like a really strong relationship with Miami as well, all this stuff. So to me, it's like, all right, let's go to Venezuela. Plus, again, I don't know if we were talking about it in the last live stream in the other video on the other channel about about how the relationship between Venezuela and the USA is not that great. But again, back then Venezuela still wasn't doing that horrible yet. And so I was thinking, and they were just starting the inflation, they were just starting the hyperinflation situation, I think, but it was still not that bad. And so I was thinking, all right, whatever, let's go to Venezuela. It's, again, it's in the same hemisphere, it's really close by, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I looked into Venezuela and I was immediately stopped when I realized that, well, if I have a U.S. passport, I would not be allowed into Venezuela because, again, Venezuela hates the USA so much that they wouldn't allow any Americans going in there. And I didn't have a passport from another country, even though I'm Cuban. Definitely, I don't have my citizenship in Cuba or my passport, so no go. So eventually, the whole Venezuela dream was what is it like? It fell through, so I wasn't able to go to Venezuela again. Thank God, in retrospect, I didn't go to Venezuela because soon after, things started getting really, really bad in Venezuela, and well, things are not that great in Venezuela right now. Again, there's a lot of propaganda, a lot of fake news out there, as to how Venezuela is actually doing. But look, long story short, it's not doing that great, okay? And I'm glad that I didn't, go out there because, again, at least in my situation, it would have been really, really difficult. So I really didn't have much of a choice. I had to, get even closer. Again, notice I started off, Argentina and Spain, and then I had to gradually move my way closer until eventually, well, I had no choice but to rely on Mexico. And guess what? As an American, born and raised in the USA, even though it was in Miami, I believed everything about Mexico. It's dangerous, it's scary, the cartels. You're gonna get kidnapped. You're gonna this. Ba 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 da puru. But at that point, I was either, hey man, you're gonna get kidnapped in Mexico, or you're gonna get kidnapped in the USA, one way or the other. You know what I mean? At least in the USA, at least in Mexico, they're not going after you, but in the USA they are. You know what I mean? So I was like, whatever. You know what I mean? I guess Mexico it is. So I just started researching Mexico. Now I went to this website. Hold on, let me see if I can find the website because I think I have it here. Uh, but let me see. Where is it? Hold on, because I want to see because this is a very. Hold on a second. Oh, there. Okay, got it. Boom. Okay, here we go. So I found this website. Okay, it's called. Hold on. Let me see so you guys can see a little bit. One second. Okay, I found this website called Numbeo or whatever. Again, 2018, and basically, I was like, okay, where am I gonna go? You know what I mean? Again, I only have a few bucks left in my pocket, so I got to figure out a place where those few bucks in my pocket were gonna go the furthest. So I went here and I started researching Mexico, and I really just was researching, what was the least expensive, place in Mexico at the moment. Okay, so in fact, let me see if maybe I can do it now. I just typed in Mexico. No, whatever. I guess let me see Mexico. Okay, there we go. Mexico. And then how did I do this? I forgot how I did it. But basically, I was able to find I forgot how it was. I forgot what I did exactly. But what I did was that like I was able to find, yeah, cost of living. Let me see property, no cost of living, comparison, index, current, maybe this was it. There we go. Okay. So I went here to the cost of living index, right? And again, right off the bat, Zurich, Switzerland. So you already know it's the most expensive. So I went to, where was it? Cost of living. I think it was this one, right? Cost of living index. And I flipped it around. Okay. And right off the bat, you get to see India, Pakistan. None of these places that I was going to go to or be at. But eventually, again, this has changed in 7 years that I've been here. But long story short, eventually, as I was going, making my way down the list here, boop, 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 I found Merida, Yucatan. It was just randomly here somewhere. I don't know where, but I just found Merida, Yucatan, right? And so I went to the Merida, Yucatan. Here, I'll put it here just for just for the sakes of because Merida's not, Merida's expensive now. All right. But anyway, so I went here and I just researched it. And once I clicked on Merida, again, this is 7+ years ago. It was one of the most affordable places in Mexico. And so right off the bat, I was thinking, man, I never heard of Merida. I wonder what this place is like. It has to be extremely dangerous. It has to be cartel hell. You know what I mean? It has to be, nobody wants to live here, blah, blah, blah. And but eventually what I did is that I put Merida into YouTube, and I put Merida into Google, and I started researching it, and I started getting a bunch of videos from like Expedia and Travelocity, and I started seeing a few YouTubers. There was no YouTubers back then like living out here. So, anyways, I went a little deeper and I started researching Merida really quick, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. This place looks amazing. This place looks awesome. This is great. And then again, the more I researched it, the more I realized, oh, wait a minute, Merida is like a little hidden gem out here in the middle of the Yucatan, out here in the middle of, so Merida's right here, okay, in the Yucatan Peninsula, all the way really close to Cancun, okay? But it's out here. It's just out here in the middle of nowhere kind of thing. And so I was like, well, whatever. I mean? It seems safe, it's obviously very affordable. They speak Spanish. It's right next to Cuba. So there's influence there. And so I was like, all right, whatever. You know what I mean? Let's pack up our bags and head to Merida. And that's how I ended up out here in Merida. I mean, that's just like the long story short here. The super short version. Because that's the thing. I really I didn't have much to go on. Because again, I was just thinking all of Mexico is extremely dangerous, and again, all the fake news that you hear about Mexico, and when I started researching this area here in Merida, I quickly realized, oh no, this couldn't be any further from the truth. So again, I really, didn't have much to go on except that I had to get out fast. And again, the reason I went to Mexico as well, and I decided to just bite the bullet and just cross the border was simply because, well, as I was doing the research, I realized that Dog the Bounty Hunter, for example, or a bounty hunter, sure, a bounty hunter from Texas could come get me in Los Angeles, or they can come get me in Denver, they can come get me wherever, for that bull crap. But guess what? They can't cross the border to come get me over here. Again, if I commit a serious crime, like, murder, or something, serious like that. Oh, yeah, of course. I mean? They can extradite my ass and, I'm cooked, obviously. But, for, resisting arrest, no, they cannot come get me out here. And, no matter, even if it's a minor drug offense, whatever the hell it is, they cannot just come out here and get me. And, again, I literally found on YouTube an episode of Dog the Bounty Hunter, where Dog the Bounty Hunter went into Mexico. He crossed the border, into Mexico. I don't know where, but he crossed the border into Mexico to come get some dude over some bull crap, over some bullshit. It was basically, again, some minor drug offense, or I don't know, he was beating his hen. I don't know what he was doing, but whatever. Long story short, when Dog the Bounty Hunter came into Mexico and captured that dude, okay, basically, guess what happened? The Mexican authorities got involved immediately, and guess who got arrested and deported? Dog the Bounty Hunter. That's right. Dog the Bounty Hunter got arrested for kidnapping and, got arrested for committing a crime, because you cannot do that. You cannot do that. Again, in the USA, the Gestapo can come get you. Shit, they can hire freaking bounty hunters that have absolutely zero training in anything to come get your ass for the most minor thing, but they can't do that in Mexico. So as soon as I saw that video, I was like, all right, that's it. I am out of here. I'm not even thinking about it no more. I am out of here. So what did I do? I started to research, how I was gonna get out here to Merida, and again, I was in Los Angeles, so the first thing I did, again, I couldn't find a place to rent in Los Angeles. Okay. So I already knew I was scarred, I was screwed. And so I was like, all right, I don't got much time left. I got like a week and a half left, 2 weeks, to figure something out. And so then I went on ahead and I researched Merida. And I researched, all right, let me see what rentals they have out here, Airbnb, whatever, right? And immediately I was able to find a gazillion places to rent. And I was like, I'm out of here, man. I am so out of here. So then immediately I was like, okay, there's gonna be places to rent, there are gonna be places to land. I have a job because I was a digital nomad before that was a thing. So I was again, I was a contractor. So what I did is like I used to edit videos and I used to work. Again, I told you guys I had clients in Los Angeles and the Hollywood area, and back then, when YouTube and all that stuff was still becoming a thing, and so a lot of people were leaving, Hollywood, or leaving, that whole what is it? Leaving that whole industry, and just becoming influencers. Becoming entrepreneurs. The whole thing with influencers and shit like that. Look, the reality is that 15 years ago and beyond, the only chance that you ever had at working, making videos, Hollywood, doing a show, whatever it is, any kind of entertainment industry, you had to bow down, kiss the ring, and they had to allow you into to that world. And as you guys know how I am, this is how I've always been. So that's why I was never ever going to get into that world, because yeah, I don't subscribe, to certain things. I don't just blindly follow XYZ just to get a few bucks in my pocket, just to do this, just to do that. Again, if that would have been me, I would have become a lawyer. I would have become a politician out of high school. Yeah, because I had the grades, I had everything. Okay. But I decided to become a cook. Okay. I became a chef. All right. That's how, you know, not corrupt I am. All right. In that sense. All right. It's only, was long story short, I wasn't going to do it. I didn't do it then. I'm definitely wasn't going to do it, now or whatever, So long story short, I was working on the peripheries of Hollywood, again, helping people that were the creators of the back in the day, the first YouTubers, the first, people that were on Instagram doing all that stuff. Nowadays, people just edit their own videos, do their own thing, but still back then it was still like a new thing. And, I had all kinds of clients, clients that, they didn't even know how to, work, the computer correctly, and but they still wanted to make videos, they still wanted to do stuff. Anyways, long story short, that's what I did. And so I already had like clients. I knew I could build more, and so on and so forth, through my contacts. So I wasn't even thinking about it. I mean, I was just thinking, all right, whatever. I just got to get out of here, and I can still, make my way, pay my bills, by continuing to do this remotely. And so, that's why I just decided to leave. Again, my thinking was that, like, which by the way, it worked. My thinking was that, well, someone that's living in Los Angeles, if they're going to hire that person, they have to charge, double, they have to charge, let's say $500, to do a project, because, things are expensive in Los Angeles. But if I'm living in Mexico and my rent is only going to be, $150, $200, I don't really got to make that much money. So I can undercut all of my competition back home, in Los Angeles, and get hired, because again, I had a pretty strong resume. In fact, I'll show you a little bit of, might as well. I'll show you some of my videos, so you guys can get an idea. All right. As to what I did. Okay. Ba-ba-da-ba-da. Here, I'll show you this video real quick so you guys get an idea. So, I used to do things like this. Yeah, sorry if it doesn't look that good, but
My name is Johnny Jackson. I'm a proud biracial American athlete. When you say Action Jackson, make sure you put some respect on it. There are a few alias names that I go by. Action, Ninja. The latest that my gym has been calling me is Mongoose. I'm prodigy of a young Jewish American mother and well-accomplished entertainer father for the Jackson 5. I was born in Los Angeles, California in 1976 and raised in Hollywood, California. Even though I was born with what some will call a silver spoon in my mouth, life has always been difficult and tough for me. So naturally, I'm my own hard work money through the job that I had at LA Fitness working on the weekends. I'm happy it worked out that way because I put all the blood,
oh no,
sweat,
sorry,
and
I know what
tears
happened.
for
Sorry.
the training that I paid for myself. I started to develop a discipline and a
I broke it. But anyway, so I used to do things like that. What did I do? Oh my gosh. My apologies. I think I broke my thing. Anyways, here's another client that I had. Someone's recital. Anyways, but yeah, so look, long story short, I used to have all kinds of clients, all kinds of people, you know what I mean? Like, so, this person right here, they were just looking for someone to edit, their recital, for example, so then, I was living in Mexico, and so everybody was charging her $500, and I'm like, hey, I'll do it for 150, that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? So yeah, these are the things that I used to do, you know what I mean? I used to do like a bunch of little things like this. Even when I moved here, I did things here as well. There's a
Soy
story that
Jorge
I did.
González Cap, tengo 31 años, tengo mielingocele desde el nacimiento y hace unos como no 6 años me dio síndrome de Fournier. Síndrome de Fournier es una infección que, me, que se alojó en la espalda.
Yeah, this is something I did for the local community here. But yeah, I got paid for this. Again, I got paid in pesos or whatever, but still. But anyways, long story short, you know what I mean?
Pues
Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I was able to do, a bunch of things. Okay, I was able to do here. Here's the last one I'll show you guys. Here's like a promo video I did for our good friend here. There's some of the, by the way, this is some of the friends that didn't want me to leave LA. The guy that you see in the intro, every single time I do an intro, every single Unleashed, that other dude is like my brother from another mother. You know, he was the one. Again, didn't want me to leave either. Things like that. So yes, I still keep in touch with everybody. Shout out to everyone. But yeah, I mean, I did all kinds of things, man. Like at the end of the day. So, what was I getting at with that? So, like, I knew that I was able to, I would be able to transfer a lot of those skills out here, and I did. I did. You know what I mean? I was able to work remotely and do a lot of a lot more work than I was able to do in LA because in LA I had to drive Uber and had to do a bunch of other things that took up more time than I wanted to take up. You know what I mean? Because again, imagine if I had to work an actual job, I wouldn't be able to pursue these, these editing jobs and do all this other stuff. So, it was, a lot of things that I had on my plate at the time. Oh, hold on a second. My apologies. I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry. I was setting, I was doing some other stuff on the other channel. So like, yeah. Anyway, sorry, it went black there for a second. Anywho's, so where was I? Yeah, so I mean that's what I was doing. I was supplementing, my income that way. So when I got out here, I was able to semi land on my feet. I only had $1,500 left to my name, but I had the survival skills. I had I had a job. I spoke Spanish, and all those things went a very, very long way. And that's why I was able to not just survive out here, but to thrive. Now, obviously, I don't do those kind of videos anymore. I don't do that kind of work anymore. I do it for me, for my channel, for my thing. But it was because the idea was way back then. I knew that I wanted to continue. I wanted to give this a shot, making videos, being on YouTube, doing all this stuff. I really wanted to give it a shot. Again, this is why from day one, my channel has always been my name because I knew how all this worked too. You know what I mean? So I wasn't trying to create like a persona or trying to create. No, it was just me, Jose Arteaga. You know what I mean? That's it. You know what I mean? And my life story. I have multiple channels. I've done multiple things. But at the end of the day, I wanted to give that a shot. And so I knew the only way I was really going to be able to give this a shot was if I had to reduce my cost of living exponentially. But unfortunately, one of the things about my industry is that I needed an internet connection. I needed to have a computer. I had to have my cameras. I had to. So I mean, I couldn't be living out of my car, and doing that. I couldn't be living on the streets and doing this, But I knew that if I moved to Mexico, I can get rent for like, I can find a place for rent for like $150, $200 a month. And I mean, are you kidding me? If I couldn't make 200, if I could make 200, 300, $500 a month, from my work, I shouldn't be doing it to begin with. All right. Simple as that. That's the way especially by that point, where I was already doing, more work. All right. So yeah, I was struggling out here when I first got here, but I had my freedom. And, the thing is, it's like, again, a lot of things led me to finally leave the USA. But it wasn't up until, I had my back up against the wall. Like I said, I couldn't find a place to live. All right. I had Dog the Bounty Hunter, knocking on my door. All right. The people in Texas were just getting worse, with the extortion and all that stuff. My lawyer, again, because I had hired a lawyer in Texas and I had whatever, but again, I found out through my other lawyer, that simply put that guy in Texas was working with those guys, the lawyer in Texas, and which I had no choice but to hire the guy. But anyways, my lawyer in Texas was working in cahoots, with the police station, with the judge, with the whatever. So it was all corrupt. And so, like, to me, it was like, I'm never going back to Texas. I'm never gonna whatever. I know my rights. I know what I can do. And again, when I eventually hooked up with my lawyer in LA, the guy that I was working for, and he was just advising me for free. Basically a lot of the research that I did on my own, on the laws, on the Constitution, on my rights, and all this other stuff, he would just cooperate, and be like, "Yeah, Jose, you're right. You're right about this. You're right about that. You're wrong about this one. Here, this is the right information. Whatever." So that helped a lot. The fact that I did a lot of research and I had somebody to check my work. My friend. I can't name names or anything, but anyway, shout out to him. I love, man. Anyways, man, that guy, man. If it wasn't for him, I don't even know where I'd be. But anyways, it was kind of kismet how we both, came across each other. Like I said, this is a whole story. Like I remember it was one night. It was my last Uber ride, and I didn't even want to take that ride. And I took the ride, and we became friends that night. I was driving him from his office. He was leaving work. Okay, like 11 o'clock at night or something like that, and I drove him all the way to his his house, and we became friends, and slowly but surely, it was just great, But anyways, yeah, but he was very instrumental in helping me out with information and right and for correct information. But anyways, yeah. So long story short, okay. So when I was in just again, I realized that I had no choice but to leave LA, but to leave the USA. He didn't want me to leave. He was at that point he started getting a little desperate that I was leaving, and he was trying to do everything in his power, to help me fight this, only to realize that we couldn't do shit. You know what I mean? I had no other choice but to go to freaking Mexico. But what was I saying? Where was I going with all this? Yes, so I went to Mexico just basically, for my freedom to start over, to get away from all that. Now, when I moved to Mexico, I was still dealing with my Texas situation because I had a lot of friends and family that were telling me, don't ignore that. Don't leave it alone. You've already invested too much money, too much time, too much everything into that. And right now they're just holding your freedom ransom. So figure it out. So anyways, long story short, I figured it out. Basically, how I figured it out was because like I was hiding where I was. I wasn't telling them that I was in Mexico. They thought I was in the US the whole time. But eventually they came a knocking. Eventually they came looking for me and they found out that I wasn't there. In fact, they found out I was in Mexico. And my God, the people in Texas were so fucking mad that I wasn't there anymore. But again, they were so dumb that they basically let me know that they themselves told me straight up that they couldn't do anything about it. And they were begging me. I mean, they were yelling at me, you better come back, you better this. But at the same time, they were basically begging me because they knew that, they couldn't do anything. So long story short, they wanted more money from me. I wanted my freedom. But since now I was in a position to negotiate where before I wasn't in a position to negotiate because I was still in the USA and they could just take me away. Well, in Mexico, they knew they couldn't take me away anymore, and they still wanted money. So, long story short, I was able to negotiate my freedom. Okay, and I was able to again negotiate a flat fee. All right, what is it gonna take for me to pay you guys to finally give me my pre-trial deferment, aka freedom? And we negotiated back and forth until eventually we came to an amount. I forgot what the amount was. It was a few $1,000s, and I was able to get that money, raise that money, send them that money, and they gave me my pre-trial diversion and gave me my freedom. We're good to go. So yes, I can go back to the USA. I am not a felon. I am not running away from nothing. All right, I got a clean slate. I just choose not to go back. You know what I mean? There's no reason for me to want to go back. So, but anyways, that's another story. But I wasn't able to deal with my situation until I actually left the country. How crazy was that? So it actually all worked out in my favor, that I had, that I got to leave. Now, obviously, when I left there and I started living out here, immediately I started to realize, oh my God, life in Mexico is fucking awesome. Again, the freedom, that I got from living out here, the peace of mind that I got from living out here, the fact that I mean, my career, was my priority, and I got to wake up whenever I wanted, I get to do whatever I wanted, and I get to just work on my craft. Again, working with clients, working on my YouTube channel, working on all these things that I wanted to do. Because look, at the end of the day, the only thing that was important to me was I wanted to rebuild, and I knew in order for me to really rebuild my life again, I had to make a lot of sacrifices. And so, again, living in an uncomfortable home, for example, eating a lot of eggs, beans, rice, just, bottom of the barrel, and I was able to do that here. You know what I mean? I was able to do that in Mexico. And so obviously as the years went on, I started to make more money. I started to, grow the channel. I started to do better for myself. Eventually I met Christian, which, became my wife. We've been married over 5.5 years already. Yeah, I know. Crazy, right? We've been together over 6 years. So everything I've always wanted basically was here all along. I had no idea it was in Mexico. I had no idea that I basically had to be pulled. I had to be dragged, through the gutter, in order for me to eventually realize that I should have been here all along. I should have left. When I left Seattle, what I really should have done is immediately left and come out here, but I didn't. I was afraid. I was scared. I believed a lot of the hype. I was scared of losing what I had. I was scared of everything. And eventually, guess what? All those fears came through. All those fears came true. I did lose everything. I lost my money. I lost my freedom. I lost everything. And then at that point, when I had zero, nothing left, negative left, that's when I decided to come to Mexico with nothing, right? And whatever, better late than never. It didn't matter. You know what I mean? I was able to come out here and restart my life. And my gosh, my life is now a million times better than it ever was. But again, when people ask me, like, how did I land here? Like I said, I basically kind of put my finger on a map. To be more specific, I put my finger on, on the cost of living, list here, and I found Merida, and this is where I landed, and I came out here, and the rest is history. But anyways, let me read a few comments. Sorry, I'm running on fumes here. Let me read a few comments. I see if some of you guys are here. Hold on, let me. You know what? I'll read a few comments. Maybe I'll put something in the background while I. Let me see what else. Here, I'll put this one.
My name's Jen Levita, and I am a painter.
Now, shout out to Henry with the $2 super chat. Muchas gracias, brother. Shout out to you. Thank you very much. Yeah, so these are the videos that I used to do here. Is there any sound? Oh, okay.
There's a lot of things that drive me. It's definitely a personal journey. It's different accomplishments. There's a great sense of accomplishment when I finish.
All
a
right,
piece
shout out to everyone
that I'm really proud of. And
oh, thank you, Luz. You know, for
I surprise myself. And
yeah, Luz is saying it's a good thing I didn't pick
like
India.
I can never recreate that, but then I go ahead and do something even better, or bigger, or even scarier than the last.
All right, that's it. There's not much in the chat going on there. But yeah, I mean, I did this. I filmed everything. You know, so back then, you know, part of the things that I would do is that I didn't even have any. This is still early in my early days. I didn't even have any clients, so I had to beg people to let me film them, to let me do little videos about them, and eventually, you know, after I got a few under my belt, then I was able to sell my services and go out there and you know, again, you know, tell people, look, this is what I can do for you. This is what I can do, whatever. The reason I can publish these, you know, I can show you these that are published is because these are the ones that I made. These are mine. This is my portfolio, whatever. A lot of other things that I did after this in the years after, you know, well, you know, they belong to the clients. So I can't really necessarily, you know, show it all. But yeah, long story short, you know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, these are the things that I would do. And out here, I was able to continue doing it. And these are still my very early days, you know, of me making videos, creating videos. And, you know, that's why for a lot of people, you know, they'll look at my story, they'll look at my, you know, my YouTube career and all this other stuff. And it's like, yeah, man, you know, I'm on a different plane of existence as, you know, other, you know, Mexico YouTubers or whatever. You know what I mean? To me, you know, all I wanted to do was make videos. All I wanted to do was, you know, have this as a career, if that makes any sense. You know, I wasn't, you know, you know, the whole thing of like showing you guys, you know, about living in Mexico, you know, everything I do on the other channel, that all just kind of happened, you know, like a happy accident. Because when I first landed here, you know, not only was I doing these videos, but again, I got to focus on making videos for my own channel and making YouTube videos and things like that. So then that's when I started to document, you know, my life out here. I started to document the whole everything, you know, how I moved out here. You know, everything. In fact, let me see if I can find it. Hold on a second, because I want to find this video here and put a little music in the background real quick. Let's see if I can find one of my early videos.
You know what? I'm not leaving. I'm not fucking leaving.
1 second. Let's go here.
The show goes on. This is my home. They're gonna need a fucking wrecking ball to take me out of here.
Yeah, where is this video?
They're gonna need to send in the National Guard of fucking SWAT team. They ain't going nowhere.
That's right. Oh man, you know what? I gotta do some digging. I'm not gonna be able to find it. Whatever. Let me see. If I don't find it in the next like 5 seconds, we'll move on.
What am I gonna do?
Oh, there we go. I think this is it. Here, check this out. Okay, so this, look, this is when I moved out here, okay? Look at that. 4:35 a.m. Saturday, June 2nd, 2018, okay? So this is the day that I left. That's what I left with. That's it. That's all my stuff right there. Okay? You saw her earlier in one of the videos, you know, the promo video I did. Well, I'm here in LA, smoking my last blunt. Here's my luggage, waiting for, hold on. Waiting for the Uber. Well, waiting for the Uber while I smoke my last blunt here in LA. 5 in the morning. About to head the fuck out of here. The adventure begins. Pretty crazy, guys. Alright, guys. Well, I'll catch you later. I'm gonna see if I can enjoy this. So, I can chill for a minute, collect my thoughts, and I guess I'll see you guys at the airport. Yeah, man. Memories, man. That was my last day in LA right there. Yeah, how time flies, huh? Oh, man. Crazy, crazy. There's a Burbank Airport right there. I flew out of Burbank Airport because I was so paranoid. I was like, let me fly out of the smallest airport humanly possible. You know, just in case. I think that's Mexico City there. Hey guys, I'm finally here in Mexico City. I got a few minutes to record. I've literally been here already like 2.5 hours. I'm on my way to Merida, and literally anyway, for the last like 2 hours I've been so lost. I had to find my luggage, put it on the other plane, find the other terminal, figure out like... Now that's entering Cancun, Yucatan Peninsula there. You know, rainbow to welcome me to Mexico. That's landing in Merida Airport right there. Like over 7 years ago now. It was raining, storming, June. That's again arriving at my Airbnb. I thought it was in Cuba. I thought it was in a third world country. Hey guys, I know you guys probably can't see me right now, but I just got here a little while ago, a couple hours ago. It's close to 9 p.m. right now, and I know again, I really thought you can see anything right now, but let me just give you a quick little tour, okay? Damn, I'm sorry. I know you guys can't see anything, but hold on. Let me get see a little better. So anyway. This is the place. Man, look at all that hair I had, huh? Alright, lock that shit. Make sure. Look at me locking here, everything. Still, I was so paranoid, you know, like where I come from. It's not safe anywhere. So anyways, alright. So this is the place, guys. This is it right here. It's pretty fucking cool, right? I'm out here in fucking Merida, Mexico, all right? And yeah, look, I'm not gonna fucking lie to you, man. The first impression, by the way, this thing works. I dropped so many F-bombs, it's hilarious. First impression that I got when I came in here, I cleaned up. Holy shit, I'm in Cuba. But you know, the person was showing me around, the person that rented me the house was letting me know it's obviously there's power, there's electricity, there's a bunch of awesome, really cool things. So here, let me show you real quick. All right, so this is what they do here. So in most civilized places, let's say like Miami. Oh wow, look. Oh man, I missed it. I wanted to see. Anyway, See, look, when I heard that, I remember when I first heard that, I was thinking, remember my cousin Vinny, that time that he was in jail, and all of a sudden, like that those sirens. But by the way, that was just an ambulance. Little did I know that only ambulances or super emergency vehicles use the sirens, not police. But yeah, long story short, I mean, I was like, oh, whatever, I'm in the hood, I'm in this, whatever. At least I knew. But yeah, anyways, that was my first day there. Let me see if I can. Yeah, you can't see shit. But anyway, so this is like a curtain. Look how. All right, and this is the room I'm sleeping in. Look how brutal. In here, you see, like that. Now you can see with this light. But anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is that in here it's freaking cold as fuck. You got the AC going, we got the fan, and it's freezing in here in comparison to out here. Right out here. But anyways, so I was thinking to myself, I'll never forget. I was literally thinking, again, I'm filming, I'm trying to make the best of it. I'm trying to enjoy the adventure, the new life chapter I was embarking on. That's why I was filming everything. It was a cathartic way for me to, deal with the situation. But I was also in the back of my mind thinking, what did I do? I cannot believe I moved out here. Oh my God. I'm literally in a third world country. There's no barely, anyway, just the way everything was, right? Little did I know that Mexico is more of a first world country than anything else. And that, again, in the days and weeks, that I, first living there, I eventually, started to meet people in Merida, and eventually they started taking me to other parts of the city. I was like, oh, wait a minute, this city is just like any other city in the USA, or very similar in many ways. So, eventually that bubble burst, and I wasn't that afraid or scared anymore of where I was. But the first few hours, few days, that I was there, I was like, oh my gosh, what I mean? What have I done? But yeah, like I said, little did I know that, this is just the very, very beginning. I mean, I knew this was the very beginning of a new chapter in my life and a new, insane, journey that I was about to embark on. But man, little did I know what it was going to turn into, what this whole thing really evolved into. And I'm just so grateful and so happy, what I mean, that everything just happened the way that it did. Because my gosh, I mean, I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. In fact, let me see if I can. Here, let me see. I think this is like one of my first nights here. You guys can see a little bit. So this is like, a couple days into me being here. No puede salir ahora. But anyways, that's when it all really, really, really started to hit me, as I was spending time here and living out here. So, all right, I think I gotta get going. I just realized the time. I gotta be done like in a few minutes. I forgot. I got somebody coming up to the house in a few minutes. But I think that's it, guys. I don't know. Did I miss anything? I don't know. I think I covered as much as I could in an hour and 15 minutes here as to, my life story, I mean, not my life story, but how I ended up out here and so on and so forth. But yeah, you know what I mean? Like from the minute I landed here, the adventure really started to begin. And my gosh, I mean, it's been, it was just amazing, So yeah, look, this is me back in the day, with my other camera. Look at all that freaking hair. Holy shit. I mean, because again, in the USA, I was so poor, I couldn't afford to get a haircut. And then, I started getting haircuts out here because they were only a few bucks. As opposed to like, a lot of money. But yeah. Man, times have changed. So yeah, look at that. A lot of that area hasn't changed. A lot of it has changed. But yeah, anyways. Ay. So many memories. Okay, all right, guys, but I think it's time for me to get out of here. So, all right, I really hope I was able to cover everything and how I landed here, and just kind of like a quick story time today. I really hope you guys enjoyed the show. I really hope you guys enjoyed, just sitting here with me, talking about the past, talking about how I landed here, how I got here, and my humble beginnings, and so on and so forth. So, Yeah, look at that. Look at the city again. It's as much as it's changed, a lot of it has stayed the same. Yeah, man, so crazy to look at these old videos now. I was literally there the other day, doing filming a video. But anyways, all right, guys, I'm gonna wrap this bad boy up because it's time for me to get out of here. But like I said, I'm on a time crunch. I just realized it's almost 4 o'clock. So guys, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for hanging out with me today. Thank you so much for joining me in today's video, today's live stream. Thank you guys for joining me here every single Thursday. Thank you for joining me on my other channel. Thank you guys for joining me on this amazing journey, this ride. Again, 7 years and counting. And we got so much more to show you, so much more adventures to go on, so much more to cover, so much more to talk about, and so on and so forth. Lucy Q says a good life has a good story. That's right. Awesome story. That's right. And that's the thing. I mean, you Lucy Q, you also got an amazing story as well. And I think a lot of us have an amazing story. The thing is, it's like whether or not, people are gonna actually go and enjoy that story that is there for them. That's the thing, that's what kills me so much about so many people that just decide that they're gonna live that 9 to 5 life and live a boring life for 40, 50 years and then start doing the crazy things that I've done. For me, I've done so many crazy things already, and I'm about to turn 44 years old in a few weeks in next month, and it's like, man, even though I've already done like a gazillion crazy things, it's like, man, we still haven't even started this yet. You know what I mean? Like we got so much more, on the horizon. It's just insane to me. What a wonderful life I live now. And again, if it wasn't for all the crazy, horrible things that happened to me, way back then, I wouldn't have this amazing, awesome life that I have now. So yeah, that's why I don't look at my past, like in a negative fashion. I look at everything, like a blessing in disguise. Whether there was a time when I got arrested in Texas, when I got fired in Seattle, that led me to do my own business. The horrible things that happened to me in Miami that finally left me for that finally led me to leave the area. Again, even though many times, of course, you're bitter, you're upset, you're angry, at life, at so many things as to the way the things turned out and the things that it forced you to do. In retrospect, if it wasn't for all the things that happened to me in Miami, I never would have left to Seattle. If it wasn't for the things that happened to me in Seattle, I never would have left Seattle. If it wasn't for me getting arrested in Texas, I never would have ended up out here in Mexico, and so on and so forth. So, and Emily, all right, here, I'm going to give you here, look, my other channel. Again, you can just look, honestly, at this point, your best bet is to go to my website, because you want to know my other channels. I got other channels, but some of them are dead, and I don't publish them, or I don't publish anything on them anymore. I'm just kind of showing you now, going back in time through my portfolio and all this other stuff. But look, long story short, just visit my website. On my website, you get to see the videos I do on this channel. You get to see my cooking channel. You get to see Unleashed, the channel that you're watching this on right now. And that's about it. I mean, really, all the links that you need to know are here on this website. And that's it. Hopefully that's enough to entertain you guys. But yeah, all the channels are in the description. All the channels are there. But, like my original channel, this channel, the one that you're watching, some of these videos on, this is a dead channel. And I had to get rid of this channel because it just got, again, I used to talk about conspiracies. I used to talk about all kinds of things. When COVID first happened, I was already calling bullshit on COVID immediately. I've talked about it on this channel before. We've covered it. But I was already calling bullshit. I was very heavy into the conspiracy, into this, into all this other stuff. And so eventually, I had to, the YouTube took this channel away, which is why I had to start my travel channel. One second. Sorry, Gizmo was already about to start barking. He wants to get out there. There's an iguana out there. So, but anyways, look, long story short, this channel's not really published. It's out there, but, like I said, I used to talk about all kinds of things, a lot of things that were unsavory. by the community guidelines and stuff like that, which now they're savory again. Now you can talk about whatever again. But at one time, I wasn't able to, I had to get rid of this channel. Actually, YouTube knocked me out of, basically YouTube took away all my stuff, and then I had to start my other channel and just get back online, and that's it. But, at the end of the day, this channel, this is the original channel, OG channel. It's out there. You can find it. But yeah, I don't publish anything on this anymore for a million reasons. And but yeah, oldest, here's some of my oldest videos right here. So look right here, this is where you see the intro for this channel. You see some of the clips, from, that's my friend Abe King. I met him while we were working together in the kitchen, in Seattle. And my brother from another mother, man. So that's the guy you see in the intro, and he's a musician. And he's in Utah right now, so shout out to him. But yeah, this is me, my early days. My first videos in Seattle. When I was first starting to think about doing this stuff. So, but anyways, all right, I really gotta go. It's already almost 4 o'clock. All right, guys, you already know the deal. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to please like, please subscribe, please share, please hit the bell icon. But more importantly than anything else, please stay awesome. I love you guys to death. I appreciate you guys more than you could imagine. And you already know the deal. I'll see you guys here next Thursday, and I'll see you guys on the other channel, on the Mexico channel that you guys know me from. Most of you guys know me from. You already know I drop videos every Sunday, Tuesday, and we go live on Thursday. So love you guys. Have an amazing weekend, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys. See, Gizmo's already out there doing this thing. All right, love you guys. Peace. Bye. Hey, guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another live stream. Back to another live stream. Back
100 times?
to another live stream.
200 times? 500 times?
Who is Jose Arteaga?
Jose Arteaga is a YouTube content creator with several channels focusing on different themes.
I can't do it. We'll do it live. We'll do it live. Thing sucks.
His main channels include travel vlogs and lifestyle content. On his travel channel, Jose Arteaga Travels.
You ain't got the answers, man. You ain't got the answers.
Additionally, he runs a cooking channel and engages in other personal projects